Hello, hobby family, and welcome back to episode 2 of There Is No Such Thing as a Prospect Podcast. I am your host, Mike Roach, on Twitter as MJR Sports Cards, and I'm so happy you're here with me today. I'm really looking forward to this episode because I think we got some really good stuff in the pipe for you. I had a really entertaining and informative conversation with one of my old Twitter friends that I think you're going to enjoy a lot, and I've identified a sleeper prospect who's under the radar and I think is primed for a breakout in 2022. So stick around to find out who that is because his cards are at a very affordable price right now. But first, one of the bigger stories of the hobby recently, on Saturday, February 5th, Jason Dominguez, one of one Super Fractor Auto, sold for $474,000 online at Golden Auctions. And I want to start this segment off, of course, by saying congratulations to the seller. I mean, that's the kind of card and sale that we all dream about making, and to be able to pull that off, I mean, I won't say that's life-changing money, but you could definitely make some pretty big adjustments with it for sure. So, I mean, whether you're a Yankees fan, prospector, whatever kind of collector you are, that's definitely a dream come true. So congratulations to the guy that ripped and sold that card. As for the buyer, I want to get into, because I have some interesting thoughts on this situation from the buyer's perspective and from a hobby perspective in general. And I don't think it's as black and white as some people are making it out to be. I think everyone wants to rush in and say, oh, that's a stupid way to spend your money. Or, oh, he hasn't even made it to the majors yet, which is true. I'm not going to judge how anyone's going to spend their money because that's their money, not mine. I wish I had that money, but I don't. So I'm not going to make any judgments on it. But it is a little bit more nuanced, I think, than whether it's a good or a bad buy. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Darren Rovell, shout out to him. Whatever your opinion is on Rovell, wrote a pretty good piece about this sale on the Action Network website. And if you have a chance, I would highly suggest going to check that out because there's some information in there that you don't really find too much on Twitter. So definitely check that out. In that piece, he reveals that the buyer is this guy who goes by Shine150 on Instagram. And I'm not super connected into baseball card Instagram. It seems like he's got a big following. I checked out his page. He has a very high-end collection. This is actually the same guy that bought the Wander Franco Super Fractor back in the day, and he paid $100,000 for that, which at the time, I'm sure people were saying that was an overpay, but now, I mean, $100,000 for a Wander Super, that's not looking like a bad deal, really. In the article that I pulled it from, Rovell said it's estimated to be a $2 million card now, which, I'm not going to say yes or no on that one, but that's a lot of money for sure. I would say it's probably at least worth more than $100,000. I would feel pretty confident saying that. But this guy also, besides the Wander and now the Dominguez Superfractors, he also owns the Jason Dominguez Red Refractor PSA 10. And that seemed to be part of the reason why he spent so much money on the Superfractor. He had private offers of $350,000 for the Red Refractor, numbered to 5, and that was 9 months ago. And he kind of used that as justification to say that the 474 seemed low in comparison to that, which it certainly does, but also it's 9 months ago. A lot has changed in the card market, especially the Jason Dominguez card market. I went back and was looking at the numbers in spring training of last year when Dominguez was the hottest prospect on the planet, it seemed. Barely 18 years old, but in March of 2021, there were 3 sales of his raw base first Bowman auto, and those 3 sales averaged out to just over $1,300, $1,336.33 to be exact. Now, though, that same card, just about 9 months later, well, I guess 11 months, but still, is averaging $526.70. So, still a lot of money for sure. I'm not saying that it's a cheap card, but that's a very steep drop. The card is now about 40% of what it was in spring training of last year. So it seemed kind of weird to me that he used that justification to spend that much money on this card, because especially in the prospect world, things change so fast. The market, can turn on a dime. And Dominguez is a great example of this, because Dominguez definitely didn't live up to the hype. He had very much an underwhelming 2021 season for what was expected of him. He had a batting average of 258, 346, 398 slugging with only 5 home runs and a just over 30% K rate. The muscle was kind of what powered a lot of the hype. He was expected to be blasting these home runs. He brought a lot of power to the table, and to have just 5 home runs is a little bit of a letdown. And those numbers kind of corresponded with a drop in the rankings. As of this recording, MLB Pipeline has him at number 17, but that's the highest out of anybody. Keith Law has him at number 78. Baseball America has him at number 87. And Baseball Prospectus actually doesn't even have him in their top 100. So there's been a big drop-off in the Jason Dominguez market. So it's interesting to see someone spending this much money now. Obviously, Dominguez is still very young. There's still a lot of time for him to turn it around. But it's interesting to me that he used the justification that he got these offers 9 months ago to spend the money now, because so much of prospecting and buying these prospect cards is about what the market is like right now. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way in a little bit. He also had another quote, though, that I thought was very telling. And he said, "I'm not impatient. Dominguez has plenty of time. And with the rarity, performance, and market momentum combined, this card has decent potential." And he's not wrong. The card does have decent potential. It for sure is rare. It's a superfractor, 1 of 1. It's literally the only one out there. So he's not wrong about the rarity. The performance and market value, market momentum, though, I'm not sure what he's meaning by that, because as I just said, the performance, at least the Dominguez performance, isn't really there, and the market momentum for Dominguez is trending down right now. So that I don't know where he's going with that one, but I do think the key phrase in that quote is, "I'm not impatient," and that's a great thing to hear. That's something that really perked my ears up, because that's how prospecting goes. You can't be impatient, and so many collectors today, I think, are impatient. Everyone wants the quick flip. Everyone wants to buy, for example, Jonathan India at $20 and flip him for $150 a month later. But that rarely happens. There's maybe 1 or 2 players a year where that happens. For most of these guys, you're buying long term. And this is why I'm not going to judge this buy and say it's a good or a bad buy right now, because the truth is, we're not going to know if it's a good or a bad buy for several more years. Jason Dominguez is barely 19 years old. He's still years away from the majors. Does he have a ton of potential? Yes, he does. Could he flame out? Yes, he could. But we're not going to know for a few years. So it could go either way. That's why I'm not judging the money on this one. But I feel encouraged by one thing. I feel that this purchase especially is not so much about buying into Jason Dominguez as much as it is buying into the baseball card hobby as a whole. Because if you're spending this much money on one single card, you're going to believe that down the line there's still going to be a strong card market in which you are able to resell this card. A purchase of this magnitude means you think the baseball card market is going to be strong for a while, and that you are going to be able to recoup the money from this purchase and then some. Because let's be honest, as much as we hate tossing around the term investing, and as much as that rubs people the wrong way, when you're spending $500,000 on a baseball card, that's an investment, and that's just the way it is. Agree, disagree, that's the way this guy is seeing it. In fact, he talked about his quote-unquote portfolio in the article quite a bit. But not to rag on the guy, because honestly, I think having guys like this in the hobby is a good thing. I think having prominent, deep-pocketed buyers kind of legitimizes card collecting to the outside world. I think it's a good thing to have this kind of money thrown around. I honestly do. And you could see it as a bubble, but I see it as validation. I mean, look at what Gretzky did for the hobby in the 90s, buying the Wagner card. All of a sudden people are kind of paying attention to baseball card collecting. All of a sudden it's not such a weird thing that, man children do in their mom's basement. I've had conversations with non-collectors who went to the National, and he told me, I went to this National, I was expecting a bunch of smelly, sweaty, greasy weirdos emerging from their mom's basement. And, that's kind of the stereotype, If you're not a kid who collects baseball cards, then you're kind of stuck in the mindset of a kid. And I don't know about you, I like to believe that I'm not. I like to believe that I'm an adult sometimes. This purchase kind of does away with that kind of stigmatization. It really shows the rest of the world that, hey, people who collect baseball cards, they're normal guys. They're normal sports cards. These sports card collectors, they're not as weird as we might think they are. They're not just these man children. This is a legitimate hobby. So I think that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing overall, and I think that by easing that stigma, it will allow the hobby to grow and flourish and bring new collectors in, because there will be less judgment on people entering the hobby or buying cards at the checkout line at Target or going into the card shop. Who's to say? How many people, I bet, walked into a local card shop this week after seeing that sale of the Dominguez card and said, "Hey, I saw this card sold for $500,000. What can you tell me about it?" Or I'm interested in getting involved. How can I find a card like that? So ultimately, while a card like this is out of reach for most of us as collectors, I think as a whole, it's a good thing. Mostly, let's be honest, as a PR move for the hobby, but it's still not a bad PR move. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think overall, this is a good thing. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Am I 100% totally right and the voice of the hobby, or am I completely off my rocker? Let me know. Reach out to me on Twitter, like I said, MJR Sports Card, or Tinstop Pod. That's TINSTAAP_pod. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if the Dominguez card is a sign of a bubble or a good thing for the hobby overall. It's going to bring more people in. If you think Jason Dominguez is overpriced, if you think this was way too much to pay for a single card, well, then I've actually got a treat for you coming up after the break. After our guest, I've got a player who I think is very undervalued right now and is primed for a breakout in 2022, currently selling at very affordable prices. So stick around after the break, and I'll be sure to let you in on that secret.
What do you say, Cummings? Are we going to do this today?
Do what?
Okay, joining me on the show today, he is the lead writer for The Apple, an awesome blog about all things Mets, host of Simply Amazing podcast, another great source of news about the New York Mets, and the self-described fan with media access. Please welcome to the show, Tim Ryder. Tim, thanks for coming on today.
Michael, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'm still not sure if that's actually allowed for fans to have media access, but I am going to roll with it.
Well, if you're not a fan and I don't know what you're doing with media access then, right? We're all fans on some level.
Oh, you'd be surprised, man.
One of the things that actually caught my eye when I was doing some research is when you were talking about your Mets fandom going back, and it stood out to me that you once described it as indoctrination via failure. And that definitely caught my eye as a Cubs fan because I very strongly related to that.
Oh yeah,
But that's not where the Mets are right now, are they? They're on the way up.
most definitely. Oh, and then we've, Mets fans, we have been teased with promises of oh, it's coming for a very long time, and it almost happened a couple of times. And the peaks are fun, but yeah, it seems like they're really gearing up for. I think Steve Cohen called it sustainable success, and that's music to a Mets fan's ears. I mean, my first opening day to 162 season, I was like 8-9 years old. I think they lost 103 games, 1992. No, 91, they were decent. But yeah, indoctrination through failure, man. That's what it is. We've earned our stripes.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know it as a Cubs fan.
Oh yeah, it just makes that it just makes it all the more sweeter when you do have something to get excited about, because you can actually get excited. It's not like, oh, another roll your eyes and sigh and here we go again. It makes it much more exciting on that level.
Being a Mets fan, I'm sure being a Cubs fan is probably in the same vein. You learn to appreciate the little things. And yeah, I don't want to say you get used to the failure, but you kind of get used to the failure. Like, it was a good season. Oh yeah. Oh, they stayed in it to like 3 weeks until the end of the year. And it's a fun year. We had some fun. And I swear people hate me for being like that kind of optimistic, where it's like, oh, it was all right.
That's
Everybody
rare in Mets fans. Yeah.
And exactly. Oh man. I think every fan base has them, right?
Oh yeah. Big time. But appreciating the little things, I imagine that kind of goes along with collecting, because that's another way to kind of appreciate the Mets and some of the rookie cards, I would imagine. So how is that kind of played into your Mets fandom, your love of baseball card collecting?
Oh, well, I mean, collecting itself started, very young. I'm 38. I was born in 83. So, the junk wax era was kind of my entry into the hobby. And, every $5 you made here, $10 you made there, shoveling a driveway or raking leaves or something, you went to the collectible shop. That's just what we did. And it was great. And, you kind of grow out of it. And I had all my stuff up on a shelf in my basement for years. And we had 2 hurricanes hit in a matter of 2 years. And we had, after the first one, I lost like a box, and it was all like trash cards. And I'm like, all right, I'm moving my stuff up to the very, very top. There's no way the water's ever going to get this high. The next year was Hurricane Sandy, and my basement filled up like a bucket, and I lost my entire collection.
Oh my God.
It was 2012. So I was already, an adult, but I just, I wasn't ready to start recollecting. And I was out with my kid, and we're at Target, and we're like, yeah, sure, let's get a pack. And we got something cool, and it was a Met, and I'm like, wow, there's that feeling again. And yeah, it's part nostalgia, and it's part just fun. I think it's just genuine fun. And tying it into the Mets, it's, everyone's got a PC. Of course, I'm a huge Mets fan. And yeah, if I see a cool Pete Alonso or a cool Jacob deGrom or a cool Ronnie Mauricio, I can't help it. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, I feel like that's how a lot of people get hooked back in, is through their kids, kind of helping out with the next generation. And as the next generation comes along, you kind of brought, just like in The Godfather, they bring you right back in.
It's funny because, she was, I don't know. She's 11. This is my youngest, but she was under 10 at the time. And, yeah, I mean, she never really caught the itch. She's not all that much of a sports fan, but we pulled some sort of refractor, and she's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, oh man, that's the look. Like, that's the feeling that I had as a kid that was her age. And it was, yeah, it was fun. And it was just like it felt right to just jump in again. And here we are, a decade or so later, and my goodness.
Yeah. And that's gotta be cool too, seeing it through your kids' eyes, especially because, I mean, so much of the hobby today, you log on to Twitter for 30 seconds and it's all about, investing, values, who's going up, who's going down, and all that stuff. So it's got to be fun to be able to kind of take a step back and look at it just like you said, just for fun, just as a good time.
Yeah, I try to keep that mentality collecting. I really do. And you know, I'll make a purchase for investment purposes. I'll make a number of purchases for investment purposes. But for every investment buy I make, I'm probably making 2 PC buys. And I have my Mets stuff and I have my players I collect, and it's almost like a self-sustaining hobby because you can do whatever you want with it. And I think that people who are like who kind of get down on people for doing what they do, that's just not what the hobby's about to me.
No, I actually really like that you use that term, that self-sustaining hobby, because I think that is really important. The balance between the investment, and that's, kind of a word I hesitate to use anyways. But the balance between investing in cards and PC in cards, because yeah, it is totally possible to buy cards and have them go up in value. And, whether or not that's investing, I'll leave that for Twitter to debate. But, and, just having fun and having a PC. And I feel like if you lean too much towards one way or the other, you're going to get burned out, because it's just so much. There's so many cards out there. It's so much money. It's easy to get lost. So without that balance, I think it's tough. It's something that everyone needs.
Oh, if I wasn't selling to buy, I would have been broke a long time ago. I try to set limits. It's because, in a sense, this is gambling. I felt it the first time I opened another card. I said, "Oh yeah, this is what I felt as a kid. I just didn't know it was the just a slight tinge of addiction." But anyway,
that's what keeps us going. Yeah,
exactly. But if I didn't replenish my PayPal account by selling cards to buy cards and had to I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. But and there's a whole argument to say in there, oh, why are you putting all your money in cards? Well, I get enjoyment out of it. And I don't really have to spend anything for them. Am I sitting looking at a giant table of cards right now? I am, but it's fun. I get enjoyment out of it. Some people put ships together in bottles. I let my card collection build itself.
Yeah, that's good. And I do think it's fun. And I think that's key, when I guess going back to that kind of quote unquote investing, where sometimes I think about it in my head and I'm kicking myself in the butt, where I'm like, man, if I put this much effort into researching Fortune 500 companies in the stock market and all these guys, as I do into looking at minor league baseball players and 18-year-old Dominican kids who can swing a bat, if I was able to put that much effort into it, I would probably be a lot better off, especially with the money I'm putting into it sometimes. But it's just not as much fun. So yeah. That's really the difference. And I think sometimes it seems that gets a little bit lost in the shuffle, but that's really what it is all about.
And it's almost like a cliquey kind of mentality. Mm-hmm. The people who are out there to make money, they kind of all, they'll find their way together. The people who are out there to have fun, there's pockets of cliques within the hobby, at least on hobby Twitter. And that's cool because you kind of get in with everybody and everyone has their own little things. But at the core of it, it's, everyone's tied together just by a simple love of the hobby. And yeah, some people lose that from time to time, but maybe they were never in it to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of that, the different types of collecting and kind of moving into the investing aspect, moving into the Mets farm system, which it's exciting to be a Mets fan right now, as because of everything they're doing on the major league level. But their farm system is actually not in such a bad place either. I know it's kind of ranked middle of the road. I think Baseball America had them at number 16 overall, which it's not great. It's not terrible. It's not great, but they've got a lot of guys who could make a lot of noise this season. What are your thoughts on the Mets farm system coming up?
Well, it's great. It's not ideal. They, the last regime, the Brodie Van Wagenen regime, they really traded away a lot of high-end talent to bring in quote unquote win now players. And it really thinned out the level that would be hitting that AAA level now. The Mets are really, really bare when it comes to the upper minors. But, when they're right now, they're top heavy, but flipped over at the lower levels. You're seeing their studs right now. They're Francisco Alvarez's, Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio. You're seeing those guys bubble up to Double-A this year. And this is really going to start to let the system open up. The Mets have, I think, 6 or 7 picks in the top 100 this year. They have been selling, trading draft picks, recent draft picks in recent years. Francisco Alvarez, they gave away 2 of their 2020 first rounders, 2 of their 2020 draft picks, high rounders. I guess there was only 5 rounds anyway, but still, I believe they traded away another 5th rounder from 2020. So, they've done efforts to kind of get that depth back. But as far as the high end guys, that's what's bringing up the rankings of the system, because those are some absolutely blue chip prospects. And those are just the top 3 in Beatty, Mauricio, and Alvarez. Matthew Allen, who's coming back from Tommy John, is projected to be a top of the rotation guy. JT Ginn, this is someone who had Tommy John before he got drafted, pretty much fell into the Mets' laps. Mark Vientos, who's I kind of want to say he's flown under the radar, but Mets fans really know him. A ton of power. He's a third baseman, first baseman type player, but with the implementation of the DH hopefully coming, there's a possibility that he could be more of an impact maker at the major leagues. I'm very curious to see where the Mets go with all these guys, because, Mauricio is going to be blocked at shortstop by Lindor for the next decade. Mm-hmm. Third base, Beatty and Mauricio might have a year, 2, 3 between them before they really get up and are ready to make an impact. Beatty's got a above average bat. We're just going to have to see if it translates to the major league level at a rapid pace. But Ronnie Mauricio, that's my guy right there.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot and listening to a lot of your podcasts, and I've heard all of your excitement for Mauricio. What are you looking forward to seeing Ronnie on the major league level?
Well, this is the thing. Ronnie Mauricio, all right, you're familiar with Ahmed Rosario. Ahmed Rosario was a very, very highly touted prospect for the Mets a few years back. He's now in Cleveland. He was traded as part of the Lindor deal.
Right.
So Rosario was supposed to be a perennial all-star, perennial gold glover. Didn't pan out that way. And that his issues began in the minors as a free swinger. Ronnie Mauricio has kind of fallen under those same issues. He's swinging at pitches he shouldn't be. He's not drawing any walks. But boy, when he goes on tears, he's absolutely on fire. Now, he came up to the Mets in spring training last season. I think it was last season. I've never seen a 18-year-old kid play against major leaguers and look that confident, hit the ball that hard, like just laser beams coming off his bat. I was convinced. It only took me, I think he was up for 2 weeks. And I'm not a prospect hugger. I'm really not. For a guy who collects cards, I do not get attached to prospects. Ronnie Mauricio, I'm Francisco Alvarez, he's on another level. He's
right.
We can get to him in a second. Ronnie Mauricio, again, he's still a young kid. He's 20 years old. He's been playing 3.5 years below league average throughout his minor league career. I honestly think he could have the highest ceiling in the entire system as a major leaguer. Alvarez, that's another story. I don't know if you've seen this young man swing a baseball bat, but that is just it's vicious, it's beautiful, it's amazing.
It's interesting because Mauricio, he's kind of floating around the rankings a little bit. And I know the rankings are all subjective, but he's a little bit all over the place depending on where you look at. Baseball America has him at 92. Keith Law has him, I think, at 40. Baseball Prospectus has him at 51. So it doesn't seem like there's any kind of clear. He's a top 100 player for sure, but there's not really a clear consensus on kind of what tier he's in, it seems, nationally at least.
Oh, and that's within the fan base as well. Extremely polarizing prospect. I think on the surface, you look at his numbers and it's like, oh, well, there's really nothing to be that excited about. I don't have let me see if I have his last year's. Oh, I got him right here. So he had 240, 291, 449 at single A at high A Brooklyn last year, which is, if you ever have a chance, man, go to Brooklyn, check out that ballpark. One of the coolest experiences you'll have in New York. You look at Ronnie, and like I was talking about the free swinging and the strikeouts. But boy, he's just got such raw talent. I think he's going to come into it, and I think that's what separates looking at him. Maybe someone hasn't seen him play, or maybe I'm not saying that these prospect writers haven't dug in and done their homework, because they have. They're all national prospect writers. But, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And the way that I say, oh my God, I see something in Ronnie Mauricio, Baseball America just might not have the same opinion. And that's fine. No one's going to know if they're right until, 5 years from now, maybe.
Right.
So it's, I guess that's the fun of it.
Yeah. No, and it is. It's tough to project also. Like you said, he's only 20 years old, and, so much can change between now and, like you said, 5 years down the line for a lot of these guys. And, it could go up, it could go down, but playing, what'd you say, 3 years below his level, like that's an
average of 3.5
right
years below his age.
Yeah, that's an incredible accomplishment just right there.
So he's sticking through. And he, like I was saying, he'll go on these. I think August of last year, he was just ridiculous. Oh my God, laser beams, going opposite field with regularity. Just, very, very impressive young man.
Oh, that's awesome. So let me ask you this then. As a card collector then, his cards actually are kind of scarce. It doesn't seem like collectors are too much on board with Ronnie. To go back to get these prices, I had to go back to December, because a lot of people it seems like they're just kind of holding his cards right now, maybe. But the average price of his first.
I was going to say, I think Baseball America's ranking kind of made everyone say, "Whoa, hold up!
Yeah,
boy, he's dipping fast. Let me go ahead and regroup." But no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, you're good.
America, I noticed that.
Yeah, but so I was surprised at the slow movement of his market. But going back to December, his average first Bowman auto price was $90.55. Do you think that's a good buy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I can go back to like March of 2021. Yeah, I guess it was 2021. It was last year. When he was really raking during spring. I'd love to see his prices at the time. I wish I was paying closer attention. I think you know what I tell you, I'm really, really trying to find an affordable. He's got an image variation. Most of the time, Bowman, they don't have their Mojo image variations. Don't have a first on them.
Right.
His has a first on it.
Oh, it's rare.
It's extremely rare. And I've been like keeping my eyes peeled for an affordable one. That's the next on my list.
So here we go. In March of 2021, that was when looks like there was a big uptick there, and his average price then was up to 123. So just over 120 for his first Bowman auto. Right? Yeah. So it's surprising to see such a big drop there. But
the rankings, when you have different, other guys bubbling up in the system for a couple of years there, Ronnie was the guy. Now the Beatty and Alvarez are really starting to shine. I mean, Beatty in the Arizona Fall League, I want to say his first like 3 or 4 weeks in Arizona, he was one of the hottest hitters in the league.
Yeah, that Fall League, that did a lot for a lot of guys out there. So let's use that opportunity then to move into Beatty a little bit. Sure. He was the Mets' first round pick in 2019. He's a little bit more highly rated nationally than Ronnie is. 39 for Baseball America, 41 for Keith Law, and Baseball Prospectus has him all the way up at 13.
Yeah.
But you still think that Ronnie Mauricio has a higher ceiling than Beatty?
I do, and that's really solely based on his athleticism. I don't think I don't really know much about Ronnie's glove, and especially where he's going to play, because again, he's not going to be a shortstop most likely. So I think that Ronnie, his athleticism will allow him to get into the outfield if the Mets want him to, move around the infield if they want him to. I kind of see him as a corner guy, but I guess we'll see. Brett Beatty is just your prototypical third baseman. He's got athleticism to move around. He certainly worked on his athleticism a little bit more. Mark Chimuta of the Mets amateur scouting director He spoke with the Apple back in, I guess, right when Beatty was doing his thing out in Arizona. And he mentioned, he actually made a point to mention, he's like, oh, he's done really made such an effort to get himself into beyond just in good game shape. He wants to be more athletic at third. He wants to be an above average fielding third baseman because his bat has been playing above his age since high school. I'm not sure if you remember Dennis Cook, the reliever for the Mets back in 2000-ish. Couple of very productive years in with the Florida Marlins at the time. But he was, I believe, an assistant coach on Beatty's high school team. He was on Simply Amazing podcast. This is probably right after Beatty was drafted. And he called Beatty the most polished high school hitter he's ever seen. And of course, that turned heads at the time. And he's really played up to it. And if let's say Alvarez is just above and beyond, let's say Beatty and Mauricio, they're 2A and 2B to me. Mauricio's 2A and Beatty's 2B, but I think at the major league level, Ronnie has the opportunity to just be a next level guy.
Gotcha. So then what do you see Beatty's ceiling being?
All-star. I really do think he has an all-star bat. I'm curious to see whether the glove pans out at third, whether he turns into more of a DH, because again, that bat just plays so well. Pete Alonso's pretty much going to be at first or in the DH spot for the foreseeable future. But if Dom Smith isn't in the plans and Beatty can field the position, there's certainly the possibility of an opening there for him. I wouldn't be totally against that. Corner infielder is a corner infielder, especially an athletic one.
Absolutely. It sounds like there's going to be some competition there at third base with Vientos coming up too.
Great, man. Competition breeds excellence, my friend. That's a Tim Ryder classic.
I'll write that on my wall. Make sure.
You'll see it on the Apple at least a dozen times throughout the season.
So I'll ask you then the same question that I asked Brian Mauricio. Brett Beatty, his first Bowman Chrome, 2019 Bowman Draft, first Bowman Chrome auto, currently averaging $111.62. Is that a good buy?
That is a good buy. I think that can go back up to around the 160. What are that? That's for a PSA 10?
That's for a raw.
That's for raw. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. He's really shot up, huh?
Yeah, he has. I mean, if we go back to March of last year, like we did with Mauricio, in March of 2021, he was averaging his raw card, same deal, was averaging $71.73, so just over $70. So he's seen a big jump over the last 12 months.
That's where I thought his raw still was at. Boy, I haven't really poked around my Mets cards lately, but yeah. I think Beatty's a terrific buy. I think that especially the buzz of the Mets now that they're competitive again, now that there's going to be more eyes on the system with, blue chips kind of rising up. I kind of think all these guys are good buys. I think that Beatty, especially playing in Binghamton next year, where, I believe that's where Pete Alonso had his breakout power season when he was coming up, was in Double-A and in Bingo.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a place for them to kind of spread their wings. And again, I think we've seen it in the past where if the Mets, and it's rare that the Mets have good prospects coming up, but once they do, these guys really, really catch fire. You see it kind of reverberate through the hobby. It's fun.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, being in a big market, New York, also helps. But the Double-A Binghamton, that's going to be big because that's where a lot of guys kind of, like you said, catch fire. If you can do well in Double-A, you're going to turn a lot of heads. I think a lot of people use that as an indicator for success on the major league level. Yeah,
it's that turning, it's that corner that you turn that you kind of, separates you from who's going to bubble. There's just such a small percentage of minor leaguers that actually make the show and make an impact. And yeah, you're right. I think Double-A is probably right where that litmus test really takes place.
Yeah. Speaking of and moving forward, this wouldn't, if I had a Mets writer on and didn't talk about Francisco Alvarez, I would probably just have to be deplatformed and shut this whole podcast down. So tell me about Francisco Alvarez.
Well, I know I think I used my best line I had earlier. Just the most vicious swing I've seen in a very, very long time. and it's so mechanically clean. Yeah, I'm enamored. I'm intrigued. I'm blown away by this kid's talent. When he connects, again back to the Brooklyn ballpark, he sent balls into the parking lot. And if anyone here is listening and has been to well, I still call it Keyspan in my head, but if anyone's been to the Coney Island ballpark, you send that into the parking lot, that is a blast. And that's exactly, he put a few back there. Just, defensively, he's supposed to be extremely competent. He has a cannon for an arm, and that bat, it just, I got to find you the clip, man. I'll send it to you in a DM. He's taking
awesome.
BP, and it's ridiculous. It makes your jaw drop. It's that just, it looks like Gary Sheffield, but the kid is 19 and he's built like a bulldog.
That's wild. And yeah, that's what stood out to me going back and looking through his numbers from last year. In high A, he had a slugging percentage of .538. He had 22 home runs. I can't remember exactly the number of plate appearances he had, but for I guess he would have been 19 at the time, year-old kid. Like that jumps out at that jumps out at you. That's impressive.
Oh my goodness. And he does it with like a little bit of gusto. Like he's I want to say he got in trouble for kind of jawing at someone after a big home run last year, but there was a little bad blood between the two teams. But yeah, he's already become a fan favorite. He's already showing just a lot of potential, a lot of promise, and I think the hobby's finally catching on now. He's a curious case because his only Bowman first is an auto.
I believe you're right on that one. Yeah. I don't think he has a non-auto, which is really weird. Normally it's the other way around, but auto that's an expensive one. I mean, he's a unanimous top 15 prospect. And, once you get up into that range, the prices on those autos start to go crazy. And you were right. The hobby is catching on. His first Bowman Chrome auto in 2020 Bowman Chrome is currently averaging $242.
I could have got a lot of 3 at $120 a piece.
No
like
way.
A month after Bowman Chrome came out.
Oh, dude,
I didn't get him. I'm like, catchers never do well. That'll come down. Bowman Chrome was still kind of new. I'm like, it'll come down. And then he went on that tear and he's really started living up to the hype. And I said, damn. And I got one. I got one at 180. So I'm still doing well on it. But yeah, I missed out.
Yeah, no, that's still a good buy though. At least, I mean, that's tough because I would have been right there with you because for a long time, I'll be honest, I wasn't even tracking catchers and their autos because for so long in the hobby, they just didn't get the love or recognition that a lot of other positions did.
Unless you're Adley, bro, like it really just doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, even beyond Adley, it seems like this crop of catchers that's coming up: Adley, Francisco Alvarez, Gabriel Moreno.
Moreno's a stud.
Yeah, and they're forcing you to take notice of catchers. You can't ignore them anymore.
Soderstrom in Oakland.
Yes, obviously the first overall pick was also a catcher. So
Henry Davis, Big Hank.
Yeah, so catching, you can't just write those guys off anymore. And Francisco Alvarez is definitely a clear example of that. Like I said, he's a top 15 prospect, and I mean, before he makes his MLB debut, he could raise a lot higher than where he is at now.
Oh yeah, especially if he keeps on doing what he's been doing.
Oh yeah, and that's going to be exciting to follow. I'll have to tune in and see some of those blasts.
Oh man, I'll give you my MILB login info. I got you, bro.
Oh, I love it. I appreciate it.
Right? Oh, we screw Manfred every chance we get, pal.
Oh, you got to, man. You got to. I mean, there's no baseball in sight, so we got to do what we can.
Oh yes.
Nice. So then moving on, a little bit lower ranked, but he's kind of been flirting on the edge of the top 100 rankings. Is Mark Vientos. Going back to that competition at third base. I mean, it seems like Beatty would probably win out on that, but Vientos has been kind of up and down a little bit, it seems.
Vientos I don't want to say he's struggled. He's always been consistently solid. He's had power potential. Again, streaky to an extent. Last year, he really kind of put it all together. And it kind of causes an organizational logjam. The Mets, they've had J.D. Davis at third base for the last couple of years, and defensively, he's just not a third baseman. It's not really going to work. Vientos, and of course, Beatty's not really anywhere near close, anywhere near ready yet, but
Sure.
Vientos is kind of next in line, and it was, well, is he ready? And as last year kind of evolved, I think it might have changed the organization's mind as far as what they can do with him moving forward. And I know he's also gotten reps at first base too. And, we talked about Pete Alonso and Dom Smith being here, but, if that tandem changes, if Dom Smith gets traded, which is certainly a possibility, the Mets have a couple of incumbent guys who could be on the move once the lockout lifts. But, a Vientos could certainly bridge a gap, and they'll have to explore all their options. I also wouldn't be surprised if they maybe try to package Vientos in the deal.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. As a collector and as just a Mets fan, how do you kind of view these prospects as trade chips versus the future of the organization? Obviously, the team has gone out and signed a lot of guys on the major league level right now, a lot of major league talent. But like you said earlier in our conversation, like the previous regime was not afraid to trade these guys away either. So how do you view these guys as assets, I suppose?
Well, I guess, value wise, you look at a prospect and say, hey, in 5 years, he could be a cornerstone or could be a cornerstone. Let's build a little hypothetical. All right. Let's say Jose Ramirez from Cleveland became available, which he'll be ridiculously expensive, but he theoretically could become available. Let's say Cleveland wants Brett Beatty, Matt Allen, Mark Vientos, and Ronnie Mauricio, plus another major leaguer or two. You're mortgaging away your future to win now. And there's no doubt, like whether it's Ramirez, whether it's Matt Chapman, I'm in my head, I'm focusing on third base because that kind of makes sense. And the Mets, they don't really need another frontline starting pitcher, but it couldn't hurt. But let's focus on Jose
never
Ramirez.
Does, no.
Jose Ramirez kind of fits the hypothetical well because he would cost an arm and a leg plus another leg. So, like, I'm okay with mortgaging the future, especially in the position the Mets are in now, where, it's not like they have such a deep farm system where they can just pluck everybody. You look at the Dodgers. They were able to move, I think it was 3 or 4 top 100 prospects in the past couple of years, and they're still one of the highest ranked farm systems in baseball. Like, that's sustainable success. And at this point, if I'm the Mets, and you got to rebuild the whole system anyway, not totally from scratch, but let's say 60% of it. What's the difference between 60 and 80%? Like, if I have to move a Beatty or move a Mauricio, I would hate to. Like, I would hate to see Mauricio or Beatty go. But, if it's going to bring in a piece that's going to help them not only compete at a much greater extent now, but will help bridge the gap until they could really replenish the system, I'm okay with it.
And it's interesting, too, that you bring that up, that obviously, like, you do hate to move them. But at the end of the day, the goal for the team and the organization is to win a World Series, right? So if moving these guys at the lower level, like you said, you're mortgaging the future away maybe, but if it gets you a ring in the process, then like that's what you're doing it for. I mean, that's what the Cubs did in 2016, that's how they got a ring. Yeah,
you're a Cubs fan. How does that feel to you? You got your ring. Are you upset that Eloy's gone, that Dylan Cease is gone, that that the Cubs had to mortgage their future and they're kind of paying for it right now? How does that weigh out to you?
Absolutely. I mean, would I like to have those guys on the team? Absolutely. But you know what feels better? A World Series, the first World Series in over 100 years. Like,
that's what I like to hear, bro. That makes me feel better. Oh, that's good stuff.
I mean, like, these guys are I hate to use the word, but like you kind of use them a little bit as assets, and like you hope to be able to keep those assets for as long as you can, and
sure.
reap the rewards of it, I think. But at the end of the day, like, if their reward comes in the form of Aroldis Chapman and he's shutting down games to win you a ring, then that's worth it too.
Sure. See, like, Like I've kind of like from afar, of course, I've always kind of been in the same boat. Like if I'm a Cubs fan, I'm fine with trading those guys away because yeah, even if it wasn't a 108-year curse, you win a World Series. That's what it's all about. Like,
Exactly.
and it had to have been something to watch the team get broken up like that. But this is the cycle that you go through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And last year, especially, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the Cubs, but yeah, it hurt to see all those guys moved away because of what they accomplished. But I mean, the returns that they got for them, they're looking pretty good right now, actually. And it's a lot of young guys, so it's tough to project. But
you got one of the Mets guys. I think he was on your list. PCA.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to maneuver towards is that Pete Crow Armstrong trade. Yeah, well, trying to be. But yeah, I mean, from a Cubs perspective, I felt pretty good about that. From a Mets perspective, what was your opinion on that trade at the time?
I was okay with it. I really thought that Javi was going to, and he was for most of the time he was here. It took him a couple of weeks to kind of get settled, but he was phenomenal. I wish they could have re-signed him, at least made the trade well worth it. Because boy, I mean, everyone's familiar with Yoenis Cespedes' run once he was traded to the Mets in 2015. He carried them to a World Series.
Right.
Baez eclipsed his marks in every way during his time with the Mets. The Mets just didn't win. Baez he forget about the whole thumbs down thing. His time in New York was possibly my highlight of last year. I mean, there was a lot of highlights last year, but boy, he does things that just nobody else can do. I think I said it on the podcast. He does things in full speed that we couldn't do in slow motion on a baseball field. Dude, and that was so exciting to me. Yeah, trading Pete Crow Armstrong for him for not even a half a season, a couple of months of him, that stings. I think PCA is going to be a great player, or at least an impact player. Mm-hmm. Would it have been nice to keep Baez? Yeah, of course. But I'm happy for PCA. I think he's going to bloom there. I think it's a nice young organization. Who I like out there? I like Nico Horner. I like him a lot.
Yeah. He had a little bit of a breakout last year too.
After he got hurt like a hamstring or something, right?
Yeah. I think he got sidelined for a while, but before that happened, it was good, and it was good because honestly, before last season too, I was writing like this. He kind of needed to have a breakout year last year because when he first got called up, it was a little bit like, all right, what are we doing with this guy? And he struggled a little bit. So I was happy to see him break out, and you love to see that for guys, and I feel like especially in the hobby, like we want all of these guys to be all-stars, we want all of these guys to go onto the Hall of Fame because it's, I mean, not only for our own selfish reasons, so their card values go up, but just because you get attached to them and they're fun to watch, like Javi Baez, like that dude is just so much fun to watch.
Yeah,
he just plays the game with so much enthusiasm that it's infectious.
It is. It was that. I'm telling you, I don't think it was even. I'm not even exaggerating. I think watching him in blue and orange was probably the highlight of my season. That was so much fun. I mean, Jacob deGrom, of course, above and beyond. But by the time that Javi was here, Jacob deGrom was out, and it almost feels like two different worlds.
So the fact that they didn't re-sign him, does that have any kind of impact on your views now of Pete Crow Armstrong or the trade or Javi Baez?
If Baez came here and flopped and just played awful and was right back to his free swinging ways and striking out 30% of the time and then maybe, but I think this is just simply me as a fan talking. At the level at which he played kind of eased it for me. Mm-hmm. And plus I know they drafted PCA to be the next Kelenic. I don't see him as that type of player. I think he's a major leaguer. I think he's going to be an outstanding outfielder. I think Kelenic's just he's going to be another level up. But I think I'm okay with it. I think it goes back to my last answer to you that if you're really making an effort to win, you kind of got to break eggs to make an omelet. And at the time, the Mets were 4 or 5 games up in the division. nice, comfortable lead in the wild card as a backup. And, as a team, they flopped. But Habaya's, didn't his performance had nothing to do with that. And that kind of makes me feel better about the trade. Again, crazy Mets fan stuff.
No, it's all good stuff. It's nice to hear some positivity coming out of New York for once.
Oh, dude, I mean, you follow the Apple. I'm, one in a million, literally. There's
Absolutely.
a million blogs, and I'm the one who just kind of stays on the optimistic side.
And it makes it all that much more easier to read. So appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's more fun to read someone being happy about their team than, citing everything that they've done wrong.
Oh, and I get to take out all my frustrations on MLB as a whole right now. So, at least I get it's like a venting period almost.
I mean, that's good stuff. We all need that right now. So assuming we do play a 2022 season, I know the minor leagues are still going to play, but I'll expand this question for the majors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who are 3 breakout players? It could be the Mets or anyone else that you like, who you think might break out and have big years in 2022 that baseball fans and hobbyists should be paying attention to?
Yoan Moncada. And it's the first one that popped in my head. I'm a huge Moncada fan. He's in Chicago with the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, everybody digs the long ball, homers sell. He could pop 20-25 a year, but he's not that type of player. But he's so well-rounded as a ball player. And I think that enough power will kind of vault him into just another level, not like the next level, but the next level up from where he is, or at least a couple levels up. Big fan of him. Everybody knows about Luis Robert there. I think that the depth of that team and how they, I guess, are on pace to perform this season and even just moving into the future. Even the pitching, Dylan Cease, I think he's primed for a huge year. Eloy coming off the pectoral thing, his prices are way down right now. That's the Chicago and Toronto are 2 teams that I would focus on. I know you're not going to get any Vladdy and any Bo stuff for cheap right now. No. Kevin Biggio. If Kevin Biggio is healthy, I truly think he could be another leg in that tripod out there.
That's an interesting thought.
He's flopped so far, but he came up as a reasonably highly touted player, highly touted prospect. I like him a lot. I think he's got a lot of room to grow. I think Joe Adell is not getting enough respect as one of the better rookies out of last year's class. And I think Joe Adell has so much room to grow as a major leaguer. I think we saw a little bit of that potential last year. And, you got your Ryan Mountcastle, who had a really, really nice year. And, of course, Wander. But, I think he kind of flew under the radar, Adell. And I think that he's a really, really solid buy. As far as the Mets, Max is sorely undervalued right now. I know, for a Hall of Famer, but being in New York, and I think that's going to do a lot for his card prices. Boy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I think that's interesting because, obviously Max is one of the biggest players in the game right now, most recognizable pitchers. Do you think that maybe that's because of the lockout right now, that maybe people aren't paying as close attention, and maybe as we get closer to hopefully spring training that those that might pick up that attention in Scherzer in New York?
Dude, this was during the postseason last year. So, and Scherzer was right, front and center and all that.
Oh yeah.
Having a terrific postseason. I was able to get, I don't know what year it is. He's still on the Tigers, but it was a finest refractor and a chrome refractor for the lot was under $20. This is a future Hall of Famer on his way to potentially another Cy Young at the time. He didn't win, of course, but he was right there. I just, pitchers don't get the love they should. Look at Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom's been terrific for years, only until he was on that incredible stretch in the early part of 2021 where his price is really starting to skyrocket.
Yeah.
I know, April, I sold a rookie for $60. I could have sold the thing for like $200 a couple of weeks later.
Dude, pitchers are so just interesting in the hobby. And I talked about it a little bit on my last episode, but it's tough because they are so much more injury prone, but when they're good, they're good. But even like you said, DeGrom and Scherzer and these guys who are, future Hall of Famers, they still, people still are kind of wary of them. It's an interesting phenomenon.
It is. And even going down to the veterans, like once you leave that young, exciting stage of your career, at least hobby wise, and you get into those middle years, unless you're Mike Trout, your value falls. Look at Trevor Story. I mean, granted, he had a really, really down year last year, but you reach that. Corey Seager, you reach a certain point where you go from having a buzz to you in the hobby, even if you're still a terrific ball player, the buzz just kind of disappears. It's very strange. It's fascinating to watch. It's more fun than watching stocks.
It is. Yeah, it sure is. It'll be interesting to see, I think, because a few years down the line, when all these prospect cards, because obviously they're kind of more in the last, not even 20 years, 10, 15 years, that as we get further down the line and these, maybe become vintage once we're like 30, 40 years removed from Bowman Chrome and prospect autos and everything, how the hobby will react to these guys then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave like detailed instructions for my kids.
Yeah, I know.
Guys, you're gonna have to go year by year. I got them all separated. They're coded beanbags. They're coded beanbags.
With painter's tape. Make sure you use painter's tape.
Oh, painter's tape with a letter and a number, and they all correspond. Oh, don't get me started.
Oh my God, I know. My wife's in trouble after I'm gone.
Sorting through that stuff, honey.
Well, Tim, thanks for coming on. Before I let you go, you got anything any personal projects you want to plug?
Oh, we have them all. I'll try to run through them quick. Okay. So, and I'm just going to give you guys all Twitter handles. Of course, you can Google any of these things and it brings you right to it. But so we're the Apple NYM on Twitter. It's the Apple NYM New York Mets on Twitter. Simply Amazing Pod on Twitter. It's Simply Amazing. You find us on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're there. I do work for Southside Sox, which is SB Nation's Chicago White Sox site. Actually, I'm going to have some coming out this week. We're going to be revisiting the Chris Sale, Michael Kopech deal. Of course, there's more bodies involved, but we're going to kind of turn the pages through that whole process.
Oh, that should be good.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be. I was digging into it today. Shout out to Brett over at. He kind of got that one popped into my head. And boy, Ryder cards. If you want to check out whatever cards I'm looking at, cards I'm selling, cards I'm buying, it's at Ryder Cards. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the gamut. And yeah, give me a follow at Timothy R. Ryder on Twitter. Can't forget about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Make sure. All you listeners out there, make sure you go and follow all that stuff. Tim putting out some great stuff and really entertaining pod. I've been listening to it for a while, and you got some really good conversations going on that. So
thank you. Well, with myself or actually with guests?
With both, I gotta say.
You know who was cool enough to join us last week was Andy Martino from SNY. And if you're not in New York, SNY is the Mets regional sports network. Andy Martino was a beat writer for the Mets for the Daily News for a number of years, columnist, the Daily News. And now he's SNY's columnist and really kind enough to come on the show and really cool conversation about the lockout. We got into like Astros. He wrote a book called Cheated. Carlos Beltran ties into it. Look, I'm giving Andy a plug on your show. Look at this.
I was listening to that. That book.
I've been very lucky to get some very, very cool guests to come on and kind of share their stories.
Well, I appreciate you being a very cool guest on my show. So
thanks for having
Tim,
me, man.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, likewise, man. Anytime. Always happy to talk hobby. Always happy to talk baseball.
Dugan, can you sign my husband's baseball card for me?
Hey, great to meet you.
All right. Thanks to Tim for coming on. That was a really fun conversation. Obviously, a lot of good stuff in there with Mets prospects, collecting, Mets guys on the major league level. and other guys all over the league. So I had a lot of fun with that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. Thanks a lot. Shout out to you, Tim. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter at Tim Ryder, at Ryder's Cards. Make sure you're checking out his stuff on the Apple and Simply Amazing Pod as well. He's putting out some great stuff all the time. Speaking of which, great stuff that is. I've got one prospect for you who I expect is going to be putting out great stuff in the 2022 season. He was a 2019 first-round pick for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he's a 23-year-old shortstop named Greg Jones. Now, before you jump all over me, hear me out. Yes, I know the Rays are covered at shortstop for a long time. I think they brought up this guy last year who's supposed to be kind of good and then gave him a decent contract at the end of the season. But with Jones's profile, they're pretty confident that he's going to work his way into the lineup somehow. Whether that's somewhere else on the infield, he's also spent some time at center field, wherever it may be. But his bat is going to be able to get him onto the field. That's been evidenced by his time in college, at his time in high A, and I think it's going to come up again in double A this season. Going back to his college days, in 2019 at UNC Wilmington, he went 341, 491, 543, and stole 42 bases. And that speed is his calling card. That's the first thing that really jumps off the page in when you're looking at him. I know some people even have him rated an 80 grade speed, although that's a little high. I think I've seen other places put him around 70, but still 70 to 80 grade speed, that doesn't pop up very much. And usually when it does, it's not guys who can hit that well, to be honest. And Greg Jones, he can hit. After he was drafted in high A Bowling Green, he went 291, 389, 527 with 13 home runs. And he still stole 27 bases, only getting caught twice. So once he gets on base, he's able to move around pretty quickly. He's also able to stretch singles into doubles, doubles into triples, and just get into scoring position fast. And that's something that's very valuable, obviously, in the game, because you want guys in scoring position so you can score. But even if he's not in scoring position, he's got that power to put the ball over the fence pretty regularly. And as he develops more, I think that's going to come out as a little more. He did struggle a little bit in Double A when he was initially called up. He had only a 187 batting average, and that slugging dropped down to below 300. But he only played 16 games for Montgomery. So that's what I call an adjustment period. It's going to take some time. Obviously, once you get called up, and 16 games is just not enough time to make a judgment on that. However, he should probably start in Double A in 2022, and that's really what I'm looking forward to. Double A is a proving ground for a lot of guys. That's where a lot of guys really make their names. You could do well in low A, high A, but if you can't do well in Double A, that's usually where the most telling level right there. And so far, Jones has proved it in college. He's proved it in high A. He's proved it in low A. He's proved it at every level he's been at. So I'm pretty confident he's going to be able to prove it in Double A as well. He did miss a little bit of time. He had a quad strain at the beginning of the year last year, so he missed some time for that. But it didn't really affect him that much, I don't think. I mean, looking at those numbers, like I said, the 527 slugging, the 916 OPS, like he came back and didn't miss a beat. So I'm not too worried about that, even though that's popped up every now and then in most of the reports I've looked at for him. In the organizational rankings, Baseball America has him as the Rays' number 6 prospect, but he's been moving up every year. The guys over at Prospect 1500 have him at number 4 overall in the Rays organization, which is pretty impressive right there. Nationally, though, he's definitely flying under the radar. MLB Pipeline has him at 84, and Baseball HQ has him at 79, but that's pretty much the only place you're going to find him. He's unranked by Keith Law, Baseball America, and Baseball Prospectus. And to be honest, that's kind of what I like. I kind of like those fringe guys, and that's what I'm looking for as a collector and as a prospector. The fringe guys who are just barely outside the top 100, just kind of floating around, who with a big year could definitely make that jump. It kind of reminds me of Bryson Stott last year, where he was kind of floating around the if he was in any top 100 list, he was going to be 98, 99, 100 if he made the list at all. Obviously now he had a good year last year. He had a good off season as well, and now he's jumped up into the 60s. So it's those kind of guys that I like, who aren't quite on the list yet, but with a good year will probably make that jump. And I think Greg Jones is perfectly primed for that. Now, I'm not saying Greg Jones is Bryson Stott. They have very different profiles, but in terms of collectability, I think there's some parallels right there. If you are looking to buy into Greg Jones, his first Bowman Chrome autograph is in 2019 Bowman Draft, and there's actually not a very strong market for it right now. There have been very few sales on eBay recently. Actually none since November of 2021. So it's a little bit difficult to find his cards. But when you do, they're not super expensive. I'm about to hit you with a little bit of a math lesson, so buckle up. There have been 5 sales of his refractor auto in 2022, and they've averaged out to $62.28 with a high of $84.19 and a low of $35. That's not a huge number of sales, but it's enough to get a range, I think, for his base card. And I'll tell you how I'm going to do that. Normally, I value the refractors numbered out of $4.99 at about 1.5 the base auto. So whatever the price range is for the base auto, I multiply that by 1.5, 50%, and that'll give you at least a decent range of what to expect for the refractor. And I found that to be pretty accurate. Obviously, we don't have the base auto price here. We have the refractor price. So what we're going to do then is divide that 62.28 by 1.5, and that gives us a base range of 41.52. So for about $40, you should be able to pick up a Greg Jones first auto. And I think that's a little bit high. To be honest, I would be a little more comfortable if he was in the $30 to $35 range, but I'm not going to be complaining too much because next year I think it's going to be valued much higher than $40. In fact, just recently, a gold version numbered to 50 sold on eBay for $170, and I was bidding on that. And this is how much I believe in him, because I don't normally bid on cards over $100, but I was bidding on this card that went up to $170. I was hoping to get a little bit of a steal there, but it's still too much for me. But if you know me and how I collect, I don't spend that much money on single cards, but this is one I was willing to drop the money on. So AA is a proving ground, and I think Jones is going to prove it this year. And I think collectors are going to see that and want to buy in. I think he's got huge breakout potential for 2022, and I would recommend finding ways to add him into your collection if you can. So that's my tip. Take it or leave it. Let me know what you think. Give me your thoughts on Greg Jones or any other prospects you want. Hit me up on Twitter at MJR Sportscards or TinStopPod. That's TINSTAAP_pod. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, where I post episode highlights, as well as YouTube, where I'll be putting up the entire episode. If you like today's show, make sure you rate and review on iTunes and hit that subscribe button while you're there as well. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm Mike Roach, and this has been There Is No Such Thing as a Prospect Podcast. So long.